Okay, so good afternoon everyone and welcome to this information session on the Digital Schools Award, Digital Wellbeing Award. Now, as we all know on the call, technology has become an integral part of our lives, and especially in the education sector where it plays a critical role in delivering education and enhancing student learning. However, with the increased use of technology, we also have to pay real close attention to the digital wellbeing of students and educators. Today we have two special guests with us who will be sharing their insights and experiences with the Digital Wellbeing Award with us. Our first guest you may recognise is Malcolm Wilson. Malcolm has been actively involved in promoting the Digital Wellbeing Award in schools and has worked, of course, with several schools to implement strategies to improve digital wellbeing. He now works with the Digital Schools Awards as a validator, and he's here to tell us more about the award itself. We also have with us today Ian Vosser, who is the PT Technologies at Braes High School and a real enthusiast and champion in the field of technology and education. Ian himself has been through the process of working on the Digital Schools Award and indeed the Digital Wellbeing Award for schools that he has worked in. And he's well versed in developing and implementing strategies and visions that promote digital wellbeing across schools. He's going to be telling us a little bit about his experience of going through the Digital Wellbeing Award process at Braes High School in, I think it's 2020, is that right, Ian? Sorry,
That's all right. We did 2021, the cyber internet safety bit, and then 22, there was the Wellbeing Award bit. So I went back to get the rest of it, if that makes sense. So
there you go. Such an enthusiast, he went back twice for the award. So at the end, we are going to have time for some questions if you have any. We really hope that this session is going to be informative and thought-provoking, and we do encourage you to consider your own school's journey and how the Digital Wellbeing Award might be a good fit for you and the work that you are doing. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first guest, Malcolm Wilson, to take control of the screen as he already has and tell us a bit more about that award. Malcolm?
Thank you very much, Kerry. I'm delighted to be here, giving my first presentation back to Falkirk College. So delighted to see everyone here today as well for that. And as Kerry says, my role now is as a validator for the Digital Schools Award. And I'm really enjoying speaking to lots of schools around the country and helping them celebrate all that they're doing. And really that's the starting point for this, is that the Digital Schools Award, whether it's the Digital Wellbeing Award or the main general award, Digital Schools Award, they're both about celebrating what schools are doing. It's not about an inspection. It's not trying to pick holes in what you might not be doing. It's about celebrating what you are doing. And it's a framework to support you, because none of us know what we don't know. And the framework provides that guide to say, here are the things that other schools have done. And maybe you consider what you're doing and where you're at the moment. And then you can see where you can work towards if there's aspects that you're not already doing. Or indeed, if you feel that you're already doing everything and everything shows up on the framework document, which I'll be going through very shortly, then you're able to go straight to the validation stage. But I'll explain the whole process and I'll explain about the award. But I'm going to start off by explaining, first of all, about how this particular award, the Digital Wellbeing Award, fits into the context of the wider award and the work of Education Scotland and local authorities and the Scottish Government. And on the first slide that we're looking at right now, you'll see that if you wanted to follow along and see what other schools are doing, if you've not already been working towards one of the Digital Schools Awards, then there are two Twitter accounts. And the Awards for Selfie.eu award is one that's a European award, and it's a bigger award in many ways, and there's more work involved, but you can also focus in on one aspect or two, whereas the Schools Digital Award, the ones that we're really talking about tonight, and particularly the Digital Schools Award, are very specific to Scotland. So we'll be looking at them, and the Twitter account for that is the schools_digital. So if you want to follow along or see the web links and go there, then these are the places that you can find more information. And on this slide at the bottom as well there, you'll see that the links to the websites where you'll get even more information and also signing up itself. But I'll be going over that very shortly. So how does it all fit together? Let's see if I can just get this moving. Here we go. So the whole programme, not just the digital wellbeing part, the Digital Schools Award is a whole school approach. So it's not about have you got somebody that's really, really keen or some things happening. It's about the whole school approach, and it's about rewarding and recognising and celebrating what's happening across a school. Now, of course, there'll be varying degrees of how much is done in each aspect of a school. That's just the nature of what happens in schools, and that's recognised. As part of this award, all of the awards are completely funded, so that there's nothing in cost to an individual school or a local authority. It's all met by agencies and funded by sponsors, HP and AMD, but it's done in collaboration between the Scottish Government, Education Scotland and the industry in order to build digital skills as central to what we're all doing. And I know it is central to what we're all doing. So, as you can see here, it's simply putting all of that into a bit more flesh to that, where you've got the strategies coming nationally. Each local authority has its different priorities, but they're essentially following on and prioritising from the national strategies. So this shows you how they all dovetail together, and then locally within your own school as to how then you want to take forward the aspects that you're ready for in your planning. And if it happens to be digital wellbeing, as we are looking at specifically tonight, then the award for digital wellbeing gives you a framework to work towards. Now, there's no time limit on when you start something and then you have to get it done by a certain amount of time. It's when you sign up and look at what needs to be done and what you think you're still working towards, then it might be a few months, it might be a few weeks, it might be a few years. It's entirely up to you how long you take to do any aspect of any of the awards. Now, the different awards that are available within the Digital Schools Award programme, there's the main Digital Schools Award, and I like that statistic that's up there. It says that 1.2 million learners have already benefited. And that's just a little reminder, not just how impactful this is, but also that it's what we do and what you're doing is about the learner. It's not about a box ticking exercise as a school. It's very much about giving you a framework to help you do what you want to do and move forward in your digital journey, digital learning journey. And then the Digital Wellbeing Award was introduced after the main school award, so it's now available, but you don't have to do it in a particular sequence. So you could, for instance, as some schools have done recently, go straight to the Digital Wellbeing Award. You don't have to do the main award. If that happens to be your school priority, and everyone recognises it is a priority somewhere to be supporting schools in wellbeing, digital wellbeing for cyber resilience and internet safety. And then for secondary schools at the moment, for secondary schools only, there's also the special recognition for computational thinking. And this is across the board. It's not looking specifically at a computing department, but it's in fact using computational thinking principles and how schools are using that across other subject areas across a school. So these are the main awards. And then there's also the European Award, which is a relatively new award, which builds on where you were. And we have, for instance, in tonight, Tracy Mutter, I know, also has worked towards that, and Falkirk High has that award too. So you have the experience in Falkirk already, and you'll hear from Ian very shortly as well about his experience in Braes High School. Now, I've used the word framework because it's not the award to get the award as being the main thing. The driver to this is to support your school to move forward and where you're going in a strategic way. To have a framework to help you look through where you're at, to judge the things that you've already done and where you are on the framework. And then if you think that there's an area that you haven't yet covered particularly well yet, when you then look at the resources that are in that framework, it gives you starting points. It gives you pointers to resources that can then help you develop what you want to develop as you go forward. So it's a framework, very much a framework, not just the award as an award. So there's another word that just basically says the same thing. It's a roadmap, or two words, a roadmap for promoting students' digital well-being. And it is about the pupils. And as well as that, there's the headings that you can see there. And there's 4 headings essentially in the Digital Wellbeing Award, which are not dissimilar to the main Digital Schools Award. It's just that they're very focused, obviously, on digital well-being. And as we look at that in more detail then, we can see here that it's just a reminder that this is all done under the auspices of following the main drivers nationally. So Education Scotland, supported by Scottish Government, Child Protection Unit and Police Scotland have all been involved in drawing this together with the financial support of HB and AMD to make sure that there's no cost to individual schools or local authorities. So everything is funded entirely. And it all integrates, as you can see there, with national documents to make sure that you know then that what you're doing has that backing. Now, I did say this at the beginning, but I'll say it again because it's worth repeating. You can, if you wish, go straight to doing the Digital Wellbeing Award as your first award. You may not have done the Digital Schools Award. Some people like doing that because it gives them the focus. It also happens to perhaps to be their priority right at this moment. But it might not be that you feel that you're ready as a school to go for the Schools Digital Award, the main award. So you can do that, and there's not an issue at all. And the process is the same regardless, but tonight we'll be looking specifically at the Digital Wellbeing Award process, but it's actually really similar to the main Digital Schools Award too. So here we are looking at how it all maps out, as it were, and you've got the main stakeholders, how it all integrates together, the framework, all of that, and obviously the driving messaging behind that is that we're all very aware of the concern that parents, carers, schools, school leaders, they all want digital well-being to be a focus. And at different times that becomes a stronger focus, but it's there all the time in the background. So this framework allows you to make sure that you've got strategies in place, that you've got resources in place, that you've got everyone understanding what their role is. Now, there's a video on this slide. I'm not going to show that video tonight because when you can look at the slides later, as will be shared with you later, then you'll be able to see and watch that video. And the video essentially goes over what I'm sharing tonight. It gives it more detail. You can see things happening, how to sign in. I'm going to go over that tonight without having to share that video, but it's there in this PowerPoint presentation, which you'll have access to after this video. So what do you do? So the first step is that you simply sign up on the Digital Schools Award at digitalschoolsaward.com. Now you might find, if you've been in the school for not too long in your school, you might find that someone in your school has previously signed up. And if that's the case and you no longer can find the registration, there's no issue at all just getting in touch with the Digital Schools Award saying that you've now taken over the role and can you be let into the system. So don't register a new school, just get in touch with the Digital Schools Award and they will make sure that you can then get in. And the reason for doing that rather than starting afresh is that each school is identified by its unique identifier. So there may be somebody who has already started the process of going through the framework and identifying where your school is at that moment in time. And therefore you can just continue that work. If you happen to be the first person to be signed in, then you've just got to start from scratch at that point. It's not a long, onerous process. It's actually quite a quick process to go through the self-review framework, which is the next step. So once you're signed in, complete the self-review framework. So you're deciding tonight, we're looking at the Digital Schools Award, but specifically the Digital Wellbeing Award. So if you click on that part, it then takes you through the steps. And each of the awards are more or less the same process in that you've got headings under the 4 headings, which you'll see in just a minute again on the next slide. And then within each heading, there are statements. And each statement then has usually 3 links where you say, well, this is where we are. This most accurately represents how our school is placed right at the moment. And underneath that, then, there's a list of resources, pointers to external resources, or thoughts about here's the kinds of things that might be worth including if you're uploading documents, for instance. And normally the registration process, because the statements are essentially generic statements in that they're not specific to your school, it's the documentation that will then bring that alive for your school. So when you do upload documents, it is your documents about your school, whereas the statements that you'll be saying, well, we're a bit like this, we're most like this, that's not enough detail. So the framework or the self-review part of it allows you to then see, well, what kind of thing are we looking for? And it tells you exactly the kinds of things that are looked for. So moving straight on. The self-review framework, as you can see here, we've got the different headings: leadership and vision, learning and teaching, student digital competence, and professional development and resources. And then within each of these headings, as you'll be able to see there too, these are the sorts of examples of things that you might see. There's the main heading, And then underneath that, different statements, you choose the one that best matches where your school is at right at the moment. And then underneath that, it tells you the kind of evidence that you probably want to upload. And then there's a button at the bottom where you can start to upload any documents, whether it's Word documents, PowerPoints, or whatever it might be. And I'll come back to mentioning other things that might be useful later on too. So once you've uploaded that, you're then ready for the next step. Now, what I should have said is that there's no need to have 100% anything. It's not expected that people will be 100% at everything. There'll be parts that you may feel, well, we've done enough, but we're not. There's still a journey to go on. It's recognised this is only part of a journey. Even once you get the award, your journey continues. There'll always be development in digital, whether it's digital wellbeing or just in general digital learning. So the next step is, once you see on the screen that the little indicator has changed colour to green, it means that you've done enough to be able to go for validation. So you submit by clicking on the validation button. That automatically then sends a message to the Digital Schools Award administrating team, and the administration team then will get in touch with a validator, assign a validator, and the validator will then get in touch with you to arrange a time to come visit your school. At the moment, that's all done virtually, so there's no visits in school. It's all done virtually, and that's usually within a couple of weeks or so. But it's entirely up to you and the validator to arrange a time that suits you, the school, and the validator. So there's no rush, and it's quite understood by all the validators who are all from education in the past. They all understand things happen in schools. So if at any time things change, you have to suddenly find that the right staff are off sick, for instance, or something happens as it does, then it's not an issue whatsoever in changing that date or time. So if the validator gets in touch, you set up the date, you set up the time. What's usually very helpful is, although you've probably uploaded documents, as in Word documents or PowerPoints and the like, into the documents, probably it's useful as well to be able to tell a story. Now, rather than saving that until the day of the validation, but it can still be used on the day of the validation, what's most helpful is if you can send that in advance to the validator. So something that tells the story under the headings of the framework. If you can put something together, now that could be a PowerPoint, it could be Sway, it could be OneNote, it could be Wakelet, anything that you use that you can share with the validator, you can use that to tell the narrative of your story under the headings of the award. Now that applies whether it's the Digital Wellbeing Award or the Digital Schools Award. It's just easier to be able to draw out each of the aspects. It prepares the validator to be able to look through these resources, look through the resources you've previously uploaded as well, and then start to begin to be prepared to ask questions when it comes to the conversation that you'll have together in the virtual validation. So the virtual validation for the main school award usually takes around 2 hours, less than 2 hours, but around 2 hours is the norm, whereas the Digital Wellbeing Award can be much less than that. So usually something between an hour and a half, so up to 90 minutes. But either way, it's usually a good idea to think about who are you going to be putting forward. You choose someone from the senior leadership team in your school, head teacher, or someone else in senior leadership, someone who's looking at the digital wellbeing or the digital learning in general, and then maybe a couple of colleagues and some pupils. Now that could be pupils like, for instance, pupil digital leaders, or it could be some pupils just represented from different classes. It's entirely up to you as to who you wish to put forward, but then a timetable for that, bearing in mind that at any point that can change, so that if someone's not there that day, there's not an issue whatsoever in switching someone else in instead, or changing the times around because things just might not work quite the way you had originally planned. There's no issue whatsoever, but it's nice for the validator to get that in advance, saying, here's who you're hoping to meet at this particular time, what they're going to be talking about. It might be a particular area. That just helps then allow the validator to have the conversation structured so that the questions are ready to ask. And I'm sure I've said it, and it is elsewhere it's written about, it's not an inspection. It's very much about celebrating what you're doing and setting you at ease, so that hopefully in that discussion, you will first of all be set at ease for everybody. You've already uploaded all the documentation. you've already seen the bars, as it were, changing to green, so you know you've done enough. It's just making sure that the validator can bring that story together to then feed back to you with the award certificate, as well as a validation report, which can then be useful to you. It's shared with the local authority, it's shared with Education Scotland, with your permission as a school, and it can be useful to you partly because it validates what you're doing. That's the point of it. It's a validation visit, and it celebrates that, and you can use that to then share more widely to the local community, to the newspapers, as you wish. And the words in there is a strong validation of what you're doing, and it's nice to have someone outside that has experience of many other schools to be able to say, this school is worthy of getting this award. Look at all the amazing things they're doing. That's what this is about, whether it's the Digital Wellbeing Award or the Digital Schools Award General Award. So that's the kind of outline of what happens on a virtual validation visit. You set the timetable, and then you basically have all these folk talking to the validator. And all the validators, myself included, are all lovely. We're all really nice. And I'm sure that's the experience of Ian that you're about to hear. At least I hope it is. Ian's nodding. Phew.
Absolutely is.
So at the next stage is that once the validation visit is finished, usually very shortly afterwards, you'll then receive the written up report from the validator, which is under each of the headings where you've shared about what you're doing. The validator then puts that into text for you. So you've then got a report that can be shared with Education Scotland, shared with the local authority, shared with the media, as you wish. You can pick out the words that you've seen in there and share it, of course, with your school community and say, look, people know what we've been doing, it's been recognised what we've been doing, and we're going to celebrate it together. And once you get that written part, you also get a certificate. And of course, you can start to use the digital badge that you can see there for digital wellbeing. And you can put that on your school website, or you can put that on email signatures, for instance, at the bottom of your email signature. Always there to remind folk that, you know, you have done stuff and you've done well and you've been recognised for it. So that's your feedback. Where can you get help? Now, you're going to hear very shortly where you can get help locally. Ian, as one of the schools that's already been through this, and other schools that have already been through this process as well, are usually asked at their own validation meeting whether they're willing to be a mentor school. Now, that doesn't impose a huge lot on the mentor school, but it simply means that you know that if they've said yes to that, they're happy to be contacted. And you'll probably know somebody at one of these schools. It doesn't even need to be a local school, but if you know somebody at that school, you can just get in touch with them and ask for reassurance. Is this the kind of thing they're looking for? Or are you, give some pointers as to what it might be useful to say or do. So you've got that as the mentor schools. So you go to the Digital Schools Award and you'll find a really neat interactive map there, as you can see on the screen. And that interactive map allows you to zoom in on your local area, but you can look anywhere in the country and find who's got the award and who's said that they're happy to be contacted. And it gives you their website link. And if you happen to know somebody, that's the best way. Just get in touch with somebody you know. But if you're not sure of anybody, then there's contact details on each of these links so you can get in touch with schools to get some support. The advice, of course, can also be asked from a validator. So if, for instance, you have already been validated for one of the other awards, then you can get back in touch with the validator that previously validated you. Or as you can see at the top of this, or maybe you can't see depending on the size of your screen, but at the top of the Digital Schools Award website, you'll also see a contact button. And that contact link allows you to send a message. And so if you're just looking for a bit of advice, then use that contact button and it will send the message to the administrators of the Digital Schools Award, and they will ask one of the validators to get in touch and start a conversation. So if you're looking for advice, you've got go-to people in your own local authority. And I'm thinking Kerry here in Falkirk, you know, she would be your go-to person as a support as well, of course. And local schools like Ian at Braes, but there's others. And you can see that on the map. So as you look around Falkirk, you'll see other schools that have already been through this and have been said in the past that they are willing to be mentor schools. So please make sure you use them. The award, though, is very straightforward. It doesn't require usually lots of support, but if reassurance is what you're looking for, then almost every school that I've spoken to that I've asked, in fact, really all schools have said they're happy to be a mentor school. because you're just so relieved that you've got the awards, but also you've done something worth celebrating. You've done the award, you've achieved something. It's worth celebrating and then sharing that so that others can then follow in your footsteps. And that is the final slide, but it's a wee reminder just before I hand on to Ian now to hear Bray's experience, that there's the links to the Twitter accounts, as you can see there, the web links to the different websites, the European Award as well as the Digital Schools Award, and you can find all the frameworks and some of the resources without having to sign in. When you sign in, you get even more. So thank you very much indeed, and I'll pass now on to Ian.
That's lovely. Thanks very much. Well, I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you today about the Braze High School experience of going through the Digital Schools Award wellbeing process. But I mean, I'm quite happy if there's any questions as we go or afterwards to talk more generally about all of the Digital Schools Awards. So as a little bit of a potted history, I joined Braze back in August 2020, and they'd already done a lot of the Digital Schools Award work, and it kind of started on the process of getting validated. But I think as Malcolm kind of suggested, sometimes schools just need to feel a bit confident to do it, and I think they felt like they were doing really well, but they weren't sure. And I think me coming and joining the school and having been somewhere else where we had been through the Digital Schools Award process, I was like, this is absolutely brilliant stuff that you're doing. We can definitely be Digital Schools Awarding. So we've done the Digital Schools Award for Scotland. There's the SELFIE, which is the European Digital Schools Award process that we've been through as well. And we're a mentor school with that, having completed all 8 areas. We've also got the special recognition for computational thinking and cyber resilience and internet safety, which was kind of the award before it became the Wellbeing Award. But what really kind of spoke to me about the Wellbeing Award is it was placing that digital well-being. It wasn't just about cyber resilience, it wasn't just about internet safety, it was about a broader approach to how we look after people digitally, and that's, you know, not just young people, that's teachers and colleagues as well. So that kind of said to me that that's something we're doing, and I think we're doing that really well. So I was keen for us to get back, and we work closely with our cluster. So if you've got if you're working closely with your cluster, and they've also been through the Digital Schools Award process, there's also a cluster Digital Schools Award which is worth looking into. But let's focus in on the Wellbeing Award for now. First thing that you've got to do once you're registered is get in and have a look at the framework that's there. And what I did is I sat down with myself, one of the computing teachers, we had a pastoral head join us, and one of the deputies, and we just looked at each of the statements and just kind of did a gut instinct. Where do we sit on that scale of, yeah, we're doing that really well, yeah, we're doing some of that, but we could do a bit more. And then the third option of kind of, yeah, we kind of thought about it, but we've not done anything like that. And so we just did a kind of ballpark stick down where we were. And you know, I think for the Wellbeing Award, there's about 10 statements to go through. So you know, you give yourself an hour or so just to kick that process off. And then we went away and came back together. And the second step was, okay, so now we've kind of roughly benchmarked ourselves on the framework about where we are. Where are the things that we don't think we're doing so well? What are our gaps? So we made a note of those. And the things that we are doing well, how are we going to evidence them or show that off to a validator? So what bits and pieces? So some of our evidence, we were like, okay, yeah, so digital wellbeing and our focus on making sure we've got an online resource for young people to be able to access during lockdown. That's been there a couple of years now. So that's a really good piece of evidence. So we're going to want to make sure the link for that is in. It's been discussed at both extended leadership team meetings and senior leadership team meetings. So we've got some evidence that it's been discussed and we've made some changes. So we just tried to gather together naturally occurring bits of evidence. So an in-service day agenda, which shows that we had a digital wellbeing input for all teachers. So that looks a little bit on how teachers keep themselves safe online, and a little bit about, you know, how do you get some headspace away from the digital devices? Because when we did that, we were pretty much doing all our meetings online, and we were trying to teach full learning and teaching timetable. So it was a lot for people. So we're just trying to, you know, find that balance. thinking about some of the policies we've got. Before we had the connected Falk iPads, we had our own bring your own device policy in the schools. So we popped something like that in there now. These days we would be putting our learning and teaching policy in, because that's really heavily focused in terms of digital technology. So trying not to have a standalone digital learning policy, and we're trying to build digital now into every aspect of our policy. So learning and teaching should have a section about digital. Our safeguarding policies include a section about how we deal with instances that happen online or with social media. So we're trying to not see digital as something that's standalone. Digital is something that is a thread throughout the schools. So just picking out the key bits of those documents. So evidence-wise, we just looked for each of those 10 statements, 2 or 3 key things that we thought really showed off what we were doing, and a couple of places where we thought we had some gaps in terms of maybe pupil knowledge on what they might do in terms of seeing things online that they weren't comfortable with. But we're like, well, actually, we can chat with PSHE and have a change some of the inputs there, and we can tighten some things up in computing and join a few dots together there. And that probably was a process that took us 6 months or so. So between registering and starting to us being at a point from to be ready for a validator's visit for the Wellbeing Award was probably 6 months. And I would imagine for some schools that could be a bit shorter if you've already been thinking about it and doing it. Schools digitally are probably further along now in 2023 than we were when we first presented for the Cyber Resilience Award in 2021, and then the start of 2022. I think it's amazing how far people have come on. So so you get that together. In terms of then, Malcolm talked about telling that story to the validator. We'd already had our validator visit for the Digital Schools Award virtually. So before the actual validation visit, we had a bit of a pre-meeting. It was maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, where I just told a bit of that story in terms of this is who you're going to hear from, and this is what they're going to show you, and this is how it relates to the different parts of the criteria. But I guess just liaise with your validators, see if they'd rather have that as a short written piece, or they're happy to have it as a chat. And I guess it's, I mean, Catherine Cunningham was our validator, and I couldn't find someone who was more helpful in terms of wanting to liaise and chat with us to understand, where we were at and what we were doing, and then what we were going to go on to do next. So the big piece, though, that in terms of for Braze High School, in terms of supporting wellbeing, is our Braze Brightside website. So I'm just going to drop that into the chat. So hopefully the link will work, and it's just a really simple Google site that we've now had running for about 18 months, and in 18 months it's had nearly 2,000 independent visitors visiting over 18,000 times, I think it is. And what's really interesting is in terms of time spent on each page, we averaged over 90 seconds per page. So people, if you think of the kind of world we live in today, when you're looking at page average view times, people click on a page and they go and click on something else immediately. It's nice to see that our view times are quite high. So people are obviously spending time reading about the resources or reading about the wellbeing supports that we have in place. So yes, this is a pupil-facing website, so we've got really clearly our pupil signposts, but it also forms our supports for families as well. So we've got signposts for parents and carers, and just to try to turn it into a bit of a one-stop shop. Now, I've provided some of the support in terms of putting the site together initially, but now it's completely run by the pastoral team, and I've also got some young people as well involved with almost validating or vetting what goes on the site. So there was some recommendations for some apps, and now we've got apps available through the connected Falk iPads. They've kind of identified some they didn't feel should be there, and others that they were like, oh, you're missing this. So that works really nicely. So if I was going to say what was the big input that we've had that we feel has made a big impact to our community, well, that's very much been making the the wellbeing websites, the Braze Brightside Wellbeing website, available, and encouraging everyone to use it. So if I turn to what we did for our validation visit, so Malcolm said, you know, an hour to 90 minutes, and we were probably closer to the 90 minutes to an hour. We opened just with a little session with one of our pastoral heads and our principal teacher of family learning, and they did a walkthrough on the Braze Brightsize website, and they talked about how that links in with our Brightsize weekly challenges. We have a Tannoy, we have a weekly challenge. It's on Twitter as well. They're all well-being themed challenges across the school. Some of them are digital well-being, and some of them are just more general well-being. So that's referenced on the site as well, so you can see details of what some of those are. So just spoke through some of those initiatives, and then there's the importance of the kind of wider internet safety message that they had through their PSHE lessons. So that was a nice way to open. We then had a group of digital leaders come and talk to us, and the digital leaders, they've been involved with supporting the iPads in terms of going into classes and providing some training and some suggestions on apps that they should be using. So they would go and talk about a study app, and there's a health and well-being app as well, and the name of that escapes me, but you know, it's all designed to help with the well-being. So they had a short, you know, input in computing classes across the broad general education year groups. Then we had some seniors who had a similar kind of input that went across some of the senior classes, but they particularly focused on dealing with exam stress and using the digital technology to help organize yourself better so that you experienced exam stress less. So it was nice to see them to do that and talk about that work. We then had a group of teachers, and they were probably in for about 20 minutes with the validator, just focusing on learning and teaching and how they include staying safe online. And we weren't too far out of the lockdown learning experience at that time, so quite a bit of their teaching had been online teachings. They were just, you know, maybe telling a few tales of how they'd seen it or had interactions online that they probably never thought they would have had in their teaching career with young people, and just how they approached that and how they dealt with that. And obviously during lockdown, some young people were harder to reach than others, so some teachers created individual teams or small group teams to keep connected with some of the more vulnerable young people. So it was nice for colleagues just to tell those stories. And, you know, while that work might have happened 18 months, 2 years ago now, I think that, you know, that's still very relevant and informs your approaches to digital wellbeing now. So I would encourage including stories like that. Our second group of young people who met with the Digital Schools Award validator was about the UNCRC leaders, and they were just focused on talking about the work that we've done to become a UNCRC Gold Award school, and what actions they've taken online, because I think that ethos has really contributed to the supportive and respectful environment that we have around the school. So that was also translated online. So how did they keep those messages going during our time of lockdown learning? And then we just closed the session up with the head teacher coming in, the deputy responsible for digital, and myself, and we just had a general discussion about what I would probably term the more boring things in terms of the commitment in the improvement plan to putting digital on the agenda, the commitment to wellbeing there, what had been done to support colleagues during that time, some of the more operational bits about, you know, how we're tracking young people's wellbeing, and making appropriate interventions, and, you know, continually looking at the blended learning strategy as it was then. I think we've moved on a little bit now, and hopefully we're not in a place where we're going to have lots of children and ourselves learning from home again. But, you know, that was the time that we're in. And, you know, from that you then get your validators report, and I think that, in terms of giving you a summary to be able to reflect upon about all the things that you're doing. I remember sitting down with our head teacher, Mr. Livingston, and reviewing, you know, what had come in from Catherine, and it just gives you a really nice springboard to celebrate success from, just so many little bits of interesting practice that you do every day, and you know, someone will have just spoken about it with the validator, and they've captured that and they've just put that into 2 or 3 sentences back to you to see that and be, you know, recognized for what you've done. I think is really wonderful. And you know, a quote from ours, which Catherine had written, that we'd effectively woven digital wellbeing into the fabric of the curriculum, and I thought, what a lovely way of articulating what we have done, and the culture and the values in terms of being respectful and looking after people were already embedded into the school, and that's just been translated into all the work that we do digitally. And you know, I feel very fortunate and very proud that I've been able to tell the Braze story, but I don't see it as my story. I definitely see it as our story. It is a collective story where all the teachers, all the members of the school community have come together. And then alongside the good bits, you also get some recommendations in terms of, you know, what you want to think about doing next. And you know, we did our you know, well over a year ago now, and you know, we implemented those recommendations. But even now, I was sat with our head teacher yesterday going, I think the digital leaders, they need a new project. I think what we haven't done is anything on internet safety in quite a long time. So we're going to get the digital leaders putting together an internet safety campaign that we'll be able to get them to make some things on Canva to look nice on Twitter. We'll hope to get them to do some videos on YouTube, and then hopefully get them in some classes, maybe doing some short, you know, 10-minute, 15-minute workshop type inputs with other pupils, just to kind of get those social media messages and being careful on social media back up and in the forefront of people's minds. Because you know, I think we all did that lots before lockdown. Then we had to contend with lockdown. We've now been getting back into school, and we are starting to get back to fully business as usual. I like to think so. So the work never stops. It is a continual process, and you can always think of something to do next, because the technology is of course always changing. So I think in terms of our experience, I'd say overall, you know, really positive, very supportive, given us a good benchmark to work against, and a clear idea from the framework about what we were doing well, where we had some gaps, and we could fill those and do things either differently or slightly better. And then it's embedded in the culture now to be continually improving and, you know, driving things forward. So that, I think, is all I have to say, but I'm very welcome to take questions. And of course, everyone is very local. So if anyone wants to come up and have a cup of tea and have a chat, maybe after the Easter holidays, once we've got all the assignments, all the SQA bits away, study leave, end of April into May, people would be very, very welcome, because I think you get a bit of a sense and a flavour from me talking about how successful it's been, but actually talking to our young people, you'll be able to see the work they're doing and how invested they are in, yes, digital technologies, but also, you know, in particular, staying safe and looking after their digital well-being.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was really interesting to hear about the Braze journey. I think it's always good to hear from someone who's lived and breathed it, and I will 100% be chinning you on coming up to speak about the UNCRC thing. That was really interesting, a really interesting addition. Thank you also to Malcolm. Obviously, that was super helpful, lots of information. I think it kind of has been echoed across what everyone said, that there is support out there. Everybody that is kind of invested in this process is so willing to talk about it, to help, to support one another. So I think the main message is, like, not, you know, don't hesitate to reach out if you are thinking about going for it, because there's plenty of support within Falkirk for you.